Okay, if those three lucky winners would like to make their way to the operations desk to get their prizes, that is fantastic. Okay, moving on to our final speaker for today's proceedings at least, and we're very pleased to be able to have Mr Paul Papalia, CSC, MLA, Shadow Minister for Education, Agriculture and Food, joining us. Following his election to Parliament as the Member for Peel in 2007, Paul chaired the Defence Industry Skills Unit Advisory Board and was a member of the Parliamentary Education and Health Standing Committee. Thank you. At the state election on the 6th of September 2008, Paul was elected as member for the new seat of Warnbro. He was appointed Shadow Minister for Local Government, Heritage and Corrective Services. Following a Shadow Cabinet reshuffle on the 27th of January 2012, Paul was appointed Shadow Minister for Education, Agriculture and Food. Please join me in welcoming Shadow Minister, whoa, that might have been a Freudian slip, he's hoping, Shadow Minister Paul Papalia to the 2012 WACSSO Annual Conference.
Thank you, Kylie. Good afternoon, almost evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for allowing me to come along today. I've got an apology to make at the outset, and that is that I would have liked to have been here this morning to have followed on from the Minister and spoken to you then, but today you no doubt are aware that it's Vietnam Veterans Day, and I had made a previous commitment to the Vietnam veterans in my own electorate to attend a memorial service. But what I'd like to say at the outset here is that I am unashamedly a supporter and an advocate of public education. I went to primary school at Burracup Primary School, and I can tell you, and my mum was the school cleaner, and I can tell you that until I went to high school, I didn't wear shoes to school. Went to high school at Bunbury Senior High School until I was 15, and then joined the military. Went on to do a whole bunch of other stuff. But I'm now the father of two sons, both of whom are in public education. So I'm not talking about public education as an interested observer or a former teacher or some sort of person just researching out of interest. I'm in it up to my eyeballs, and like all of you, I am sharing the fears, the excitement, the hopes of being a parent of a child going through the public system. And I think, and I do think, I believe it's essential, regardless of whether your children are in the public system, that we have the best possible public education system we can possibly achieve, because all of us will benefit from that, and all of us will suffer the consequences if it isn't. I was considering what I was going to say to you in the course of an address, and fortunately for me, I understand you launched a position paper today titled the 2012-13 State Election WACSSO position paper, which was no doubt contributed to by all of you, and states the position of the P&Cs around the state in regard to a number of significant issues you're confronting in the lead up to this election. And make no mistake, we are in an election campaign. There is no doubt about it. When the Premier spends most of his state conference talking about us, then we're in an election campaign. And so from now on, regardless of whether someone is a minister or a shadow spokesperson, you should listen to them, confront them, question them, because neither of them is going to be able to do much between now and the election on the 9th of March, except make commitments to you. So if we're letting you know where we stand, and I'm not going to make announcement. I will make one announcement today that is a commitment. I'll do that later on. But other than that, I'm going to address all of the positions that you've listed in your paper to some extent. Many of them I'm already addressing in policy, which I've written, has been submitted to Mark McGowan and our strategy team to be costed, prioritised and determined as to whether or not we'll support it and when that will be announced. So I can't make all of those announcements today. I can't actually specifically answer some of your questions, but I can talk about them, and I will make one commitment today because I checked with Mark on the phone earlier on. When you get his authority, you can do it. The first point that you made, and I'm hoping, has everyone seen this paper? Have you got it on your tables?
Delegates, it's, for those of you who are still waiting through all of the information, it's the yellow document that's in your conference bag. So if you'd like to follow Paul through as he makes notes against them, if you grab them out, that would be the best way forward.
You can check up on me, and I'll try and finish this quickly so that you can then ask me questions, because no doubt it might provoke some. Lifting the profile of public education. I wholeheartedly endorse the sentiment behind this position, being that it is necessary that we actively work to lift the profile and the status of public education. But I've got to tell you that I do question, and I know that you've recommended it here, that some money be spent on publicising the benefits of public education and promoting the system, but I do question whether it is appropriate that we spend significant amounts of money right now, in the next 6 months before the March 9th election, next 7 months, on talking about the public education system when the government in its budget cut $30 million out of public education as part of its efficiency dividend. Spending $400,000 on an ad that was aired during the Olympics didn't strike me as the right priority. So yes, I endorse your point. I accept the need, and I thoroughly embrace the objective of arguing the case for public education and championing the cause, but I will be questioning, and I understand that there's about to be more money spent on this type of ad in the coming months, and I question whether that is the appropriate time to be doing it and whether it is really going to achieve the objective of elevating the status of the education system at this time, or whether or not that money could have been spent better elsewhere. The second point is school funding, resourcing and support, and it obviously is this one, yes, absolutely focused on the Gonski review. See the banner over there. Now look, the recommendation and the position from WACSSO is it fully supports the recommendations, and it calls upon the state government to fully and openly participate in the Council of Australian Government's process to enable the recommendations to be implemented. And WACSSO calls upon the state government to publicly commit to the implementation of the recommendation of the federal review of funding for schooling. Look, honestly, I'd just like the state government to talk about the Gonski review, because the only thing that we've heard, didn't hear what the minister said this morning. I hope he talked about it, but his predecessor, the only thing that we heard from her was that she hadn't read the report. Firstly, a couple of days after it was released, and secondly, about 2 weeks after, and then they didn't talk about it again. And I asked them a lot of times in estimates to give them the opportunity to discuss it. I don't know whether this minister has, but I do know that the Premier said within 24 hours that the Gonski review was nothing but a grab by the federal government for the state education system. And that's just ridiculous. Firstly, because no federal government in their right mind would want to take over the state education systems, because it's a state role. But secondly, it demonstrated that the Premier hadn't read the report, because it doesn't say that at all anywhere in the report, and it's about 318 pages that I have read, and I don't believe there's any suggestion that that is the objective of that review. I support some of the major elements of Gonski, and I disagree with Christopher Pyne. I do believe within our system we have a serious inequity problem. There's growing residualisation of disadvantage within the public system, and then further within the schools of the public system there is even further residualisation, meaning that it's all been disadvantage is increasingly getting more dense in a fewer number of schools. So there is a need to address that. I don't know how that will be achieved. The suggestion by Gonski was that you can do it with $5 billion additional money poured into education across the nation every year. But he didn't have to come up with where you found that $5 billion. So that is a challenge. I do believe that there is a problem, and I've written policy that addresses disadvantage, but I certainly haven't got $500 million for Western Australia's 10% of the $5 billion. So it's a challenge. I don't have the benefit of going to the national partnerships or the COAG conferences and discussing all of the things that they do and the government has done. So I can't tell you what we will do, other than I believe it is a valuable tool. The Gonski review did identify a number of serious issues, but that's the most telling and most urgent one in my view. And I think were we to win in March, that will be the top of the list as to what we're going to do about it. The next point there is in your position paper is information communication technology, and we have received, we being the state opposition, Mark McGowan and his chief of staff and some other people with our shadow treasurer met with the group that is lobbying on your behalf for increased funding to meet the deficiencies in information technology. It's undeniable that there are deficiencies. It's a big challenge because you're talking what we had suggested to us by the coalition of the unions and your body and the principals associations was that you're talking about a couple of $100 million, I think, in infrastructure, and beyond that, additional ongoing recurrent expenditure. So I'm aware of it. We as a party are aware of it. I can't tell you what we're going to do about it yet, but I do acknowledge that it is a serious issue. Support in schools. I do think that it's undeniable that when the district officers were removed, a whole layer of support for schools was taken away. You went from a district office being responsible and supporting in the order of 20 to 24 schools, I think, to now a region which can have 200 plus. And to suggest that all of those resources were devolved down into the schools is just ridiculous. It was a cost-cutting measure. I have drafted policy. It is in our system for addressing this matter. It's not the solution that you've got there, but it is a solution. And all of these policies that we will be announcing will be done in advance of the election campaign so that you can analyse them and assess them and compare them to the other side and make your own choice. Independent Public Schools Review, expansion of the program. Your position is that you want to halt to further intake of schools into the IPS program until an independent review has been undertaken to determine the effectiveness of the program and clear benefits to student outcomes, and that parents of students in IPS schools participating in the review be asked about any increase in parental engagement under this program. I've got to tell you that I think generally the independent public schools system has been rolled out in a fashion that doesn't allow for any analysis of whether the students benefit. I understand a lot of people think it is valuable and a lot of people are concerned about it. So I think your position is quite a reasonable one, that there be an independent review. What I can tell you is there's not going to be one before the election, because the review that's been conducted by the Department of Education Services is not independent in my view. They'll be looking at it from within the system, analysing the system to determine whether or not they've done a good job, and I can tell you what I reckon the outcome of that will be. But the only measure, regardless of which side of the fence you sit on with independent public schools, is the benefit to students. That is the measure, and that is the measure that should be applied. I don't think it's fair or right that 50% of the children in the state system are missing any benefits. If there are benefits, they should be shared across the entire system and everyone should benefit from it. We've currently got only 1/3 of the schools and 50% or so of the students that are in the independent public school system, and that's a public school system. It should be one system that we provide all of the benefits to everybody for. And I think the way to do that is analyse it, stop, analyse, see what benefits there are, and determine whether or not there are. If there are some, you provide them to everybody. I know Anne's grinding her teeth over there at the moment. So Anne Gisborne from the Teachers Union here has been providing me with a lot of advice, and I do seek out the support and advice of teachers. As I said at the outset, or you would have heard, I'm not a teacher, I'm not an educator, and I don't have experience in this field, so I have to go and research. I seek advice as to what I should be reading, who I should be meeting with, who I should be talking to, and I'll accept advice from anyone in this room as well. So if you've, on the completion of this, if I don't answer something or you want to give me some more advice later on, feel free to contact my office and get in touch, let me know. School Council Board training, I'll address that at the end. Year 7 relocation to secondary school. I believe that 29 high schools, which is what the government has funded for the Year 7 move in 2015, will in all likelihood be inadequate. I don't believe that only funding 29 of the state's high schools, a couple of hundred of them, I know it's actually probably 93, in the order of 93 high schools that this applies to. That is not, it's about a third, so that is not enough, in my view, to adequately allow all of the Year 7 in 2015 to enter school. Beyond that, there's been no real transparency to the planning, so we know that there's going to be something like 1,500 shortage in teachers for high school in 2015. But it'll be preceded by the next 2 years. The next 2 years, there'll be a surplus of high school teachers. So teachers will be probably leaving the profession because they can't find work. And then the following year, in 2015, we'll be desperately searching for teachers. And there should be, if the system is going to decide, make an announcement and decide that it's shifting to Year 7s to high school in 2015, it should have prepared properly. There should be a human resources management plan to go with it, in which all the variables are known, because we know how many children we're talking about, we know how many teachers we're talking about, we can project how many we're going to lose, how many we're going to retain, that sort of thing. It should be possible to deliver a transparent and open plan to everyone well in advance, so all of you are given certainty. And at the moment, we don't have that. The recommendation for consultation is a very valid one. In Queensland, when they announced that they were going to move to Year 7s to high school, they took 5 years to do it. They released a green paper giving a plan, an outline plan, initial outline plan. They let everyone comment on that. They did about 90 or so consultations around the state for parents and other community members who had concerns. Then they took that advice, those concerns, and they produced a white paper. They put that out again for comment, consultation, and then they're going to phase it in. But they're starting in 2015 as well. So they started in 2010. We announced it in December last year. It's a very short time frame. I don't have any confidence that there's been a significant amount of work done on preparing for it. If there has, it hasn't been released to us, unless you know something I don't know. The next point regarding student welfare services, I can say that I'm addressing in policy, and it was good to hear Yvonne and Holly-Ann talk about those issues earlier. I'm not going to say what I'm doing, but I will in due course. The points regarding student road safety and the speed zones, I don't know. What I will do is I will take those to our Shadow Transport Minister, who's Ken Travers, and I'll pass your concerns on to him. It is his responsibility, although obviously I have some input, but I will let him know that what WACSSO's concerns are. You've got a good document here. It's very clear what you're asking and what your concerns are. I hold a lot of concerns with regard to the nature of the rollout of flashing signs at schools, because I think it's been compromised a bit. But I won't go there at the moment, but I can tell you I'll pass on the information. Community engagement. The points that you make there about parental engagement and then about the Teachers Registration Board following straight on for it, I think are valid. When the legislation was introduced to replace WACOT, the Teachers Registration Board removes any stated requirement for parents to have a say or have input. I think that is a reasonable thing to suggest that they are a significant stakeholder group with regard to the teaching profession, and I'll address that in policy as well. Financial assistance, I really like this point because that's our policy. You say reintroductions of a means-tested allowance for parents of secondary school children in years 11 and 12. Well, it's not going to be means-tested because the state can't means-test. We don't have access to tax information. We don't have access to people's capacity to pay. But what we can do is base our cost of living payment, which is a policy that Mark McGowan was one of the first ones he released. If you want to read it, I'd urge you to go to his website, www.markmcgowan.com.au, and you can read it. It's fully costed, and it is costed not from making cuts to our current services. It's costed from cutting spin doctors within the current Barnett government, because they increased them so much that we figured we could cut them by about 30%, and that would cover the costs that are identified for this policy. The Labor's cost of living payment provides allowances that pretty much replicate the previous Pays to Learn allowance that was introduced by Jeff Gallup. It'll be going, and I will say it is going to parents and it's not going to the schools, and I've had complaints from the schools about that, but my view and the view of the opposition is that it's the families that are doing it tough at the moment. We understand we will do other things to help schools, but it's the families that need the assistance with their kids going through school. So that's where the money's going to go. And you will be probably aware that it's a $200 payment to families who have children in year 11 and 12, and a $400 payment to families who have children in traineeships or apprenticeships. But that is our policy. Now I'll just return to the one I missed, and this is, I find extraordinary, and it was brought to my attention when I got the portfolio, and I wasn't aware of it before, that WACSSO used to train school councils in their responsibilities for individuals prior to assuming their responsibilities on a school council. You used to receive $15,000 a year to conduct that training right around the state, which is pretty much peanuts in the terms of a $3.9 billion budget annually for the Education Department. But it was cut as part, I believe it was as part of the first efficiency dividend round. And I can tell you that Mark said, yeah, we'll do that. We'll give it back to you and we'll give you that role, because we think it's a good role, we think you did it well. And it didn't really take much consideration. So that's your position paper. Those are my initial observations with regard to those positions. Look, got 9 minutes, or longer if you want, but I'm sure you want to go to dinner or something rather than listen to me. But if anyone's got any questions now, I'll try and answer them. Please be aware that there are significant amounts of policy that we will release well in advance of the election so that you can judge us. You can make your determination. We understand that it is a challenging thing for an opposition to get elected after only one term. It's not unheard of in Australia. It has occurred on 3 occasions in history. In all of the governments, in all of the states and federally, 3 times a government has been defeated after only one term, so it's not unheard of, but it is challenging. So we know that if we're going to do that, and we believe that we need to do it, I actually believe that we have some really good, significant contributions to make in this field, in education, so vitally important to the state. And the only way we can do that is by taking office at the next election. We know if we want to do that, we have to engage with people, we have to be innovative, we have to show some imagination, and we actually have to try and offer better policy solutions than the government has. So we'll put them out there, you can judge us, and you can hopefully vote for us. Thank you.
So if you would like to put a question to Paul, please do make your way to the microphones at the back of the room, and I'll recognise Ruth. Please do state your name and your school when you're starting. Thanks.
Ruth Thatcher, Perth South Councillor. You didn't mention anything about dental clinics.
Sorry, Ruth, you got me. Yes, we fully endorse every recommendation on your position on dental, school dental technicians. There was as I said it as we came in on the table over there, on Thursday there was, I think we did a matter of public interest Thursday. We did a matter of public interest in Parliament supporting the calls that are made in your position. I think some of it may have been overtaken by events, or the government claims that they have already upgraded the technology that's supporting administration in the dental assistance offices. And I did see some of that going on when we last visited. But all of the statements regarding pay and their entitlements we fully endorse, and we're advocating for them. So that's not really an issue. I'm sorry I missed that one.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Cairns. I'm from Charthouse Primary School, P&C, in Waikiki, down the road from you. My question is, are you or your wife on the P&C? Your kids are in public school, so...
Yeah, no, they're not. No, we have been, but not this year. I'm out a lot, but...
Really?
I try and handball that. No, but we have... One of our sons is a type 1 diabetic, so it kind of gets challenging for us to make that degree of commitment, and I understand it is a significant commitment. What I do for my P&Cs in my electorate is I give them a bike every year, every single one of them, for fundraising, and I talk them up all the time, and you've got me, I am not on a P&C, so I apologise for that, but I do advocate on your behalf.
Don't apologise, most people aren't.
No, but I do, what I do when I go to assemblies, and you're right, it's a very small number of people who make a disproportionate contribution. You're all to be commended for it, and I always say that when I'm at assemblies and urge parents to get involved.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Caroline Droeg from the Geraldton Secondary College's PNC. You talked about the financial assistance that was withdrawn by the Barnett government in terms of the payment to families, which was a very big downturn. But I was wondering about, because Barnett did 2 withdrawals, not only the It Pays to Learn and the vet payment, but also the $100 in the high school system per child. And that has caused a great distress to the finances of the schools, leaving our high schools in Geraldton in the last 2 years with deficits at the end of the year ranging between $180,000 and $210,000 of unpaid fees because they don't even get the $100 from the government anymore.
Yeah, I am aware of it. You're right. That is another cut, and I can't say that isn't included in our cost of living allowance. The one that we're providing is to parents, not to the schools, and it doesn't replace that. I understand that is going to be a gap. As I said, there are a number of policies that are prepared and have submitted, and they address, particularly in needy schools and schools that are challenged by disadvantage. I'm focusing on them. As I said, I believe that is the most significant issue identified by Gonski. Yep. So it may not be that allowance that we do, it may be something else.
But the fact of the payment, like for example, It Pays to Learn, was sort of paid in the first semester of the year and intended for the parents to sort of cover their school fees as the invoices come, but the most beneficial contribution by the state, apart from the general grant, was $100 per student, which came directly to the schools and helped put the programs in place to the fuller amount fuller amount that it was. And I'm not saying that reintroducing the financial assistance to the family will not be helpful. It will, but the schools, until further time, are terribly, terribly disadvantaged by this non-payment.
Yeah,
directly to them.
I agree. And look, I understand that. And as I said earlier, I acknowledge and understand the reduction in support to schools that's also occurred as a consequence of removing district officers too. There's a lot less support for schools than there used to be. Yeah. And I have policies. We will be releasing policies to address that. It just may not be that same allowance.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Warren, you just got in because I was going to say Michelle and then Leslie. I'm sorry, Warren, I'm going to recognise Michelle and Leslie first, and then you'll be the third speaker, and we will cut the questions there, please. Thank you.
Hi, Paul.
Hello.
Would you commit additional funding to high schools with specialty programs?
Look, I can't talk about that specific question. What I can say is I'm concerned about the specialty programs at the moment because of the nature of the Year 7 move. The way the plan has been announced, there's only 29 schools are getting funding. As a consequence of that, The only way I can see that they will fit the necessary numbers into schools is if they constrain every school to its local catchment, which they're almost doing by de facto. You know, they're not saying this is our policy, but they're saying you must enrol local catchment first, and you're not allowed to go on to seek out students for their specialist programs from outside your catchment at the moment. Now, what that means is that a specialist program will be kind of just like another program, because I know that people, the way that they've built specialist programs, they rely on attracting individuals. They want to elevate the esteem with which that programs are held in the community, and they seek out children from around the state to support that program. So my concern would be whether or not they're going to be viable in this current environment with the Year 7 move and the way that the funding's only been limited to a certain number of schools. I can't say I'm giving funding to it. I support the concept, but beyond that, at the moment, yeah, I can't really say I'm going to give you more money or anything like that. Is there anything else you wanted to ask about that? Or
in the essence of time, and just so that everyone gets their bits out, hopefully you might be able to catch Paul very quickly before he runs off, or he might be staying for a beer, which would be great. All right, thank you. Leslie, thanks.
Excuse me. Leslie McDonald, Serpentine Primary School. After the Gonski review was released, our district council got together a few members and went to visit Don Randall to seek what his position was in response to the Gonski review. He was quite obviously not a supporter of it and felt that the current system worked just fine. He did, I have heard this before, he did quote a figure saying to me that the growth within the public sector was 1%. I'm not quite sure what he meant by that. I have heard it before, and I wonder if you could either clarify or rebuttal his statement that the growth within the public sector of schools was 1%.
No, I don't know. It's not fair to ask me what goes on inside Don Randall's head. Look,
I had heard it before, and it confused me as well.
Look, the challenge with Gonski is that when they delivered them their terms of reference, they told them that no school will be worse off than it currently is. So that means every single school right across government, non-government, the independents, the wealthy and the not so wealthy non-government schools would all retain at least what they get now, and then deal with what issues you identify and make recommendations as a consequence. So that's where the $5 billion extra came from, because they're not saying we're going to take money away from some schools that don't really need it and give it to other schools. But look, Christopher Pyne is their shadow, and his comments with regard to Gonski were pretty clear. And it's not surprising when you consider and I'm not going to campaign for the feds because it's hard enough trying to deal with everything else they do. Yeah. But there was one thing that he did say, was that he doesn't believe there is inequity in the system. I disagree. There is inequity in the system, and the Gonski review isn't the only review to have identified that. Anne Gisborne gave me a review or a study by Professor Teese in Victoria that identified in advance of the Gonski review that he's the one who states very clearly there's growing residualisation within the education system in Australia, and the disadvantage is residualised within the public system. And that's undeniable, and it's just ridiculous to suggest otherwise. Anything else with regard to percentage growth and that sort of thing, I don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
My final question. Warren Daniel from Kinross College.
Yeah.
As of June this year, all state schools have had to implement the Australian curriculum. Is Labor aware of the massive increase in the costs of learning resources coming due to the implementation of this curriculum? I would estimate that it's about 300% per subject for each high school subject.
I haven't heard. I am aware of the national curriculum implementation, but one of the things that you suffer from in opposition is you don't have a lot of resources and you don't have a lot of visibility of actual detail from within our system. So if that is an analysis by, is it your own, or is it done by...
Taken from the costs of resourcing a department which I'm ahead of,
Yeah.
and the cost of the new resources which we have to buy. No school has them yet. They're just being published as we speak.
Look, I'd happily have a chat to you afterwards and seek out some information. I can try and ask the Minister if that is the case and whether that's a reasonable projection and what he's doing about it. But I can't say that I know about that level of cost. I can say that it's another impost on the teaching profession at the same time as things like My School websites are putting up league tables and expert review groups are... results are being published, and we're telling the community that we want a good public education system, we want people to take pride in it, but we are treating the teaching profession in a very punitive fashion, which seems to be counterintuitive, not very smart. Thanks. Thank you.